Life Map Agency Project. Creation. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish in the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." Genesis 1:25. For me, the story of creation and God's word is my story. It's where I come from and where I get my views on the human condition, human nature, and our agency. To me, I believe that our human nature and our condition is both changeable and unchangeable. So here is scripture in the beginning when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge. Before that, we didn't have a sense of right or wrong. We just lived in complete perfectness and harmony. There was no death. We weren't ashamed of anything. And when they took on the burden of knowing what God knew, that is when our condition changed and our nature changed. We became concerned with looking good and avoiding looking bad. We became concerned with thinking that we knew what was right and wrong, and it became honestly a heavy burden that we were never supposed to bear. Also, because we did that, we couldn't be in the presence of God, so therefore we were going to die. We were our bodies are dying. And then the condition of lording over the earth, the animals then killed each other. We hunted them. We've been eating meat and all that. But I always say from the beginning that the vegans and the nudists have the right idea. Although it doesn't work this side of heaven, it's still, whether they believe it or know it or not, to me, it's still the human condition, the human desiring to be back in the original state where we could be naked and not afraid. And there would be no death. We didn't eat animals. We didn't need to. We ate for pleasure, the fruits and berries and all of that. So while we are dying and we cannot change that, at least as far as our bodies, we can change it by accepting Jesus and crossing that bridge. But we always will struggle this side of heaven with choosing for ourselves what's right and wrong and wanting to do things selfishly and whatnot. So it's really hard for me to say which one I lean towards most as far as the type of agency we have. As I explained, we are both dying and can also live forever, at least our souls, if we choose to believe what God said, which is that Jesus was him, and that bridges the gap between death and life. And it's really because heaven wouldn't be heaven with everybody else running around saying what they think is right and wrong, right? Just like we live in this world. So it's really about just giving up that you're right and going by what he says, since he's the one who created us. Like, he put us together, and so he knows what's best for us. So like I said, I mean, creation, my story is his story, and his story is my story. So I was born in September 6, 1978. My parents moved from Estacada to Boardman, Oregon. The PGE coal-fire plant was starting up, and they were building houses there, and my dad had worked for PGE for 5 years, and we moved there where they thought they would be a part of something really big. I already had a brother who we were only 16 months apart, and for the most part, I mean, as far as agency and everything, my life, what I would say, was just on autopilot. Like, I was born, I had no choice over that. And I did things based on whatever meaning I was making. And it was just kind of like things happened, for the most part, things happened to me versus me being autonomous and choosing things. But I believe there's a mix of things just happening and God knowing what's going to happen, and helping guide and turning everything into the good for us. And then, I mean, but we do have our free will and our choices. My family, as you can see here on the left, we're together. My parents were married 16 years, but then he decided he fell in love with my stepmom, who he was at work with. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And when my dad left and my parents divorced, it was a major transition in my sense of self, security, how I related to the world and my parents and everything. It just totally changed the trajectory of who I was. I did have my friend Jenny here in the softball picture that you can see. She talked to me about God. She would go to parties with me, but she didn't partake in the parties, but she drove me around and was with me. But she didn't judge me, and she taught me about Jesus and how it felt to accept him. And I looked at her as kind of perfect. and But it still planted a seed. And then I met my friend Tracy, and she put my life on a completely different trajectory, at least her presence in my life, partying and drugs and boyfriends and all of that, and my rebellion. And it completely changed who I was, and also took me into the occult. So my family didn't raise me with any talk about God, or faith or any of the sort. Jenny was the only person, and then my grandfather, who was Mormon, kind of taught us a little bit, but I rejected most of it. Young adulthood, I graduated high school. That was a miracle by 1996. And then a year later, I joined the Marine Corps, which really changed my life. Became a military police officer, and gave me a whole new worldview. While I was in, this is David Reed. I have not found him again, but he taught me about Jesus. He talked about saving himself from marriage. He didn't cuss. I mean, we're in the Marines, and he was just a completely different type of person. And he brought Staff Sergeant Sales in to talk to me, and she was the first person who didn't preach at me and just told me to ask by myself if I thought the universe or whoever, whatever, to show me who they were. And that was totally different. And I had been talking to my ops chief, who also talked to me. I don't remember a single thing we talked about, but I just know that he was patient with me. And then he gave me the book, The Renewing of the Mind, which taught me that God wasn't something to obey and another dad, father figure that would be disappointed in me, but God designed us, and really he just says do and don't do these things because he's our friend, and he really loves us, and he put us together and knows, what's good for our bodies, what's not, what's good for our minds and our hearts and souls. It's not the, wrath of God like we think. So I went to church with David and Staff Sergeant Sales and them, and I was in an all-black Calvary church in Okinawa, Japan. I was the only white girl in there, and I got saved. They prayed over me and put oil on my hands, and they felt really warm, and that started my path along with God. And I think for the first time in my life actually gave me some true agency over my life to start choosing for myself what it was I really wanted my life and myself to look like. But I did go through a couple marriages before. In the military, you kind of just get married. This is Vegas over here to Philip Hodge from Chicago. And they kind of ended before they even began. And after the first marriage, that's kind of when I was like, what am I doing here? And was really searching for something more solid. Then I finally got out of the Marine Corps because the environment was really tough to try to follow God in. It just didn't align with my values. And when I got out, I started dating my junior high sweetheart, Ken. And he was the love of my life. We had so much fun. We were doing ministry together, went to Bible college, all of that. But we both came from a very difficult past of partying and lots of struggle. So for 10 years, we were together. We made 2 beautiful children. On May 2nd, Giovanni Jacob Johnson. My son was born on May 3rd. 2 years later, Laura was born. And by October of 2011, we separated because of addictions, and um, just didn't want to live my life with that as I had after my parents divorced. And so my journey as a single mother began, and God carried me all the way through. He's always provided. And in 2013, I was introduced to a work called Landmark Forum, and this work is a miracle. It's not Christian, but it really gives you a sense of, you go through a methodology and discovery, like the Socratic method, where you discover for yourself. No one gives you the answer, but you look at your life and listen and use language in a completely different way that actually has you have that agency over your life to choose, to see where you're making meaning, and how you've created your life up to this point, and that you can basically put the past in the past and create a whole new future for yourself, which led me to my self-expression in the world. I was on the bathroom floor doing some side work as a single mom. I kept trying to get this job and that job, and things would fall through. Worked for the city of Gresham. I was working for Intel, but working part-time, and started my own business because I realized that God gave me a talent for cleaning and methodology and a joy of it, and it brought me peace. And then I combined that with my military background and experience, and I believe it was God inspired, as well as with Landmark, which helps me be really related to my humanity and what holds me back there. They both go in hand. And so I started Marine Clean. And shortly after that, my kids' father met another woman, and they put me in a 2-year-long custody battle where I had one of the most difficult times in my life, but it also showed me a lot of how God protects us. And I learned that even when you're having a dark time in your life, it can also be one of the most beautiful times. I remarried again to another Marine that I knew, and I believe he was in our lives for a reason, just for a short time, but he was not healthy and everything as a combat veteran, and so we divorced again. And right after that, I did all the work to get the house in my name. My business started taking off, and now I raise my kids and am completely independent, single and financially independent, and living a great life with my kids. So while human things happen to us, I totally believe that we are not human beings having a spiritual experience, but we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And that's my summary of the human condition and our nature. And that's the struggle between both of them until we leave this earth. But I believe that God works all things out for us, even though it may not be how we want it to look, and that doesn't mean it's without pain. So one of my favorite verses, of course, is really popular, is "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Thank you for listening.